Hello everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Life After Kids with Doctors Brooke and Lynne. I'm Dr. Brooke.
And I'm Dr. Lynne.
Thank you for joining us.
Yeah.
We're so glad you're here.
This week we're talking about something that's important to us as we age, because over 55% of adults in the U.S. over the age of 50, it's been estimated, have osteoporosis to some degree or some form of bone loss. So we're talking about bone density.
Yes, very important topic for us as we age.
Yeah.
So let's hit the ground running. Let's first talk, I'm sure you all know the difference between osteoporosis and osteopenia, but just in case, osteoporosis is more of a disease of the bone. Osteopenia is you're losing bone density, but not to the same degree. So just to clarify those terms for you.
Right. Osteoporosis is the more advanced version of osteopenia. So if you've gotten to a place in your life where you've had some sort of bone screening, bone density screening, you may have gotten a result that said osteopenia.
Yeah.
And it means that unless you incorporate some measures, you could be on your way to having osteoporosis.
Right. The good news for us is that there are a lot of things that we can do naturally to be proactive to make sure that we don't get to that place. And that's really important because, I mean, how many of us know loved ones that are elderly that have fallen and broken a hip or they fracture a rib? And a lot of times that's because bone density has decreased. That's where the struggle is that you need to be just so careful.
Yes, and it really is. It can be fatal to break a bone at a late stage in life. So it really does behoove you to put some time and effort into building up those bones.
Yeah, and do it now. Don't wait. I mean, I think it's easy for us to think we're still young, it's not a problem. Everything you do now has a say, and what you're going to do down the road. And once again, this is all natural things and simple things that we can incorporate, right?
Yes.
So, do you want to knock us off or start us out?
So I think the first thing that we should talk about is exercise.
Yeah.
This is well known, but let's talk about what type of exercise helps bone density. And it is the type where you are doing some resistance training, but also just hitting the pavement. And I mean that literally, because anytime your bone is stimulated with a contact with the ground, basically, that stimulates those cells in your bone to keep the bone built up versus taking bone out.
Right.
Yeah, because again, our body's amazing. Maybe you don't know this, but we learned this in school, and it was fascinating to me that your body has a slip and check measure for bone. So sometimes it needs to take calcium out of the bone to put into the bloodstream to keep blood calcium levels at a healthy level, and it'll actually take it out of the bone. This is how we get osteoporosis, osteopenia. But it can also put the calcium back if there's enough in the blood, to keep that balanced and keep us healthy.
Yeah, that's a good point. So here's the thing when it comes to, as you said, like doing things, hit the ground and actually hit, so you get that kind of absorption, or the impact was the word I'm looking for. Thank you. If you're not in a place where you want to do like running or jumping jacks or whatever it is to get that impact, a very safe way to do it and still get the same effects is a rebounder. Rebounder is great for bone density, but it's far, far easier on your joints. So that's a great way to get the impact. When we're talking about the strength or resistance, that can look like weight training. That can also look like body weight training. So maybe you're not lifting weights, but maybe you're doing push-ups or planks where you're holding a position, or you're doing squats. Like there's so many weight resistant things you can do without the weights.
Yeah, right? And it all helps your bone. The important part is that you're contracting the muscle that'll pull on, because of course muscle's attached to bone, and it's going to stimulate the bone to keep strong to support that muscle. And that's how that works.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And by the way, if you're at a place where you have bad joints or you can't tolerate the impact, you will still benefit from things like getting on an elliptical, swimming, biking, even some yoga can help with your bone density. Just moving your body in general is going to be a benefit to you. So don't feel like if you can't, for whatever reason, if you have an injury or you're at a place where you can't start there, you can still benefit by just simply moving your body.
That's right.
What else?
Let's talk about supplements.
Yeah, this can be really important, and some of these that we'll talk about we can also get from food, but vitamin D. And remember, as we've said, if you watched our previous video with vitamin D, make sure it has K2. That's imperative for bone density.
Yes.
Magnesium.
Yes.
Manganese.
Yep.
Did I say calcium yet? That's an obvious one. Yep. Calcium.
Yeah, because calcium is one of the main minerals of bone.
Yes. And
Yeah,
when we talk about calcium, I want to touch on one other thing here, because calcium, like you're going to hear, it comes from milk and cheese. Yes, but one of the best sources of calcium, if you didn't know, is green leafy vegetables. Dark green leafy vegetables have calcium, and the good news is they also have vitamin K. So you're killing two birds with one stone. So
think about where cows that have, calcium in their milk. Think about where cows get their calcium. It comes from grass.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Manganese, you can get it from things like macadamia nuts, and other nuts, things like that. You can also supplement with it. Magnesium, gosh, that's such an easy one to supplement with. It's not expensive, and also good for sleep. And like, that's just one, like, if you're not taking magnesium, we talked to you guys about this with the vitamin D, one of the most important things you could take. I would say that also magnesium. I mean, you're just covering so much ground there with that particular supplement.
Yes, and it's one of the most efficient minerals in this country, as we've been testing people as of late, where many of us are very deficient in magnesium.
Right, because it used to come from our soil.
Yeah.
And our soil is so depleted. Well, not from the soil that we eat dirt, but it would get into our vegetables from the soil.
Mm-hmm.
But because our soil is depleted, that's a story for another day. Here goes Dr. Brooke on a tangent again.
Yeah, so I think the next most important thing to talk about is foods that can really deter you. So we just talked about foods and supplements that can help build up your bone. What are the things that you're possibly eating, taking in on a daily basis, weekly basis, that can really work against you, and some things you need to just know that it's going to hurt your bone density if you continue to consume those foods.
Yeah. So I hate to say it, but our old friend alcohol.
Soda.
Yeah, well, soda, let's talk about that, because this is an interesting thing. If you're drinking soda, even if it's diet, if you're still there and thinking it's sugar-free, whatever the case, soda is high in phosphorus. When you get too much phosphorus actually is going to pull calcium out of your bones. It's going to decrease bone density.
Our body just wants things to be balanced, so it's all about checks and balances, and it has to, in our blood, it has to keep that pH a certain level, or else we'll go into shock and die. So it'll pull it from the bone. It has to get it from somewhere, and it's stored in bone and can be used in bone. And interestingly enough, that's when you take the drugs. If you think, oh, I'm fine, I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing, and my mom's on a drug for osteoporosis and it increased her blood density, or bone density rather, just remember that those drugs kill the cells in your bone that break down bone.
Yeah.
And so you only have the ones that build it up. But your body, that's a whole system that your body has got going on, and it knows what it's doing. And if you just take that out, what are the downstream effects of that?
Yeah, you always want to ask that question.
Yeah.
Once again, it's not medical advice.
No.
You're going to do what's best for you,
Yeah.
but...
And in some case, medication is warranted.
Yeah, but when you come from the mindset of your body is wise, it knows what to do, it was built this way for a reason, but it needs to be treated well. There's where the conversation is, what can we do, and the things that we're talking about to make sure that this process of bone deposition or bone removing happens as it should.
Absolutely.
One thing that we didn't touch on, well, two things actually. First, as we're talking still about things that can be have negative effects on you, like the alcohol and
soda.
Thank you. Excessive caffeine too can do it too. So be mindful of that. One other thing that we didn't touch on is hormone balance is really huge, because you want to cycle as long as possible, because the longer you have the hormones in your system fluctuating, the better for your bone density. And you might want to have your estrogen levels checked. Once again, Dr. Lynn and I really believe that the body knows what to do, so you don't want to overdo it. Estrogen is naturally going to dip when we go into menopause, but if it's way too low, that's not great for your bone density either.
That's good.
So really important to know. Anything else that you have for us, my friend?
I think when you talked about foods that you could eat, there's a few that we could throw in there.
Yeah.
Bran rice, macadamia nuts, those are high in manganese. Hazelnuts, sea vegetables, maybe you mentioned that. But just do a quick Google search and you can find out, what foods are good for bones, and just try to get a few more of those in your diet.
Absolutely. Guys, thank you so much for joining us. It's always a pleasure to have you. Make sure you're following us on all of our social media feeds, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Pinterest, and our website is www.lifeafterkids.com.
Have a great week, guys.